Welcome to the Operators Association podcast. I'm your host, John Allen, former Navy SEAL and one of the co-founders of the Operators Association platform. This marks our 27th episode 27th podcast. This is our 8th episode of the bonus podcast called Aspiring Operators. And so today I had the pleasure of speaking with Nate Bragg, who's an aspiring PJ, Air Force PJ, and he is an OA member. And I think the most interesting thing about this interview is he's actually using a sports psychologist to help him kind of strengthen his mind before he goes into the pipeline. He dealt with some things from a mental perspective, performance anxiety, if you will, during his esteemed hockey career that ultimately flamed out. And now he's looking to kind of prepare himself as best as he can, knowing that a big part of his success is going to be predicated on, his mental toughness going into this pipeline. So I thought this was a fascinating interview. I'm actually surprised to hear that anyone that I'm speaking to from OA is using a sports psychologist, because that's such a forward-thinking and smart move. I wish that I had the foresight to do something like that before I went to Buds. But I think that it's a very interesting interview. I think Nate, he's only 20 years old, but he sounds like he's older than I am. Very astute, very mature guy, and I wish him all the best. So we pick up the conversation with Nate jumping into a little background on himself and on his decision to go PJ. Enjoy.
As a kid, I was always like a nerd about it, I guess, to be frankly honest. Like when you wake up in the morning, and some kids just watch Saturday morning cartoons. I was watching Surviving the Cut or Blood Class 234, because it always kind of interests me. Just really, I think it was the selection process what interested me the most. And as I kind of grew up, I learned more and more and more about different soft units, and PJs kind of really stood out to me because of just the mission set. Literally they're willing to lay down their life to grab anyone, civilian, military, doesn't matter. And that really kind of resonated with me. And then when I got to high school, I played hockey, and I had a kid who was a senior on the hockey team who was going to the Air Force and had a pipeline contract to go to the pipeline. And then after that, it was pretty much game over for me. I was like, that's what I want to do. That's pretty much how I found out about it.
That's honestly that's a really good reason. I think you hit on two things that I think a lot of people. Well, you hit on one thing that I think most people who are interested in special operations would agree on, which is, the people that go into special operations typically are really drawn to the upfront challenge, the selection process. And so that's a very common reason for being really interested in getting into being a PJ, a Raider, a SEAL, whatever it is, because there's that huge upfront challenge, right? So that is something many people can agree with. And then I like what you said, the second part, which is just the PJ mission set is what ultimately kind of tipped the scale, plus you knew the guy on your team that was going. And for those of you that don't know, PJs they rescue, like you said, anyone in virtually any scenario. So you can imagine their training is all about extremely high-risk operations where they are literally being thrown typically into a horrific situation to rescue someone where without the PJs, they aren't getting rescued. So that's really cool, man. I think that you have two really compelling reasons to go. So give us a little snapshot of age, where you live. Do you have family in the teams? Kind of give us that piece to you.
Yeah, so I'm currently in Utah right now, going to school. So I go to Weber State, so it's pretty close to Park City or Salt Lake. I just turned 20. I'm getting my degree in emergency health management and fire science. So it's kind of I guess I could be a firefighter. That was kind of my plan for a while. And I'm working out, just getting that waiver completed, just so I can make sure I get a shot at the pipeline.
Actually, let's pause right there. What is the waiver for? And from a high level, what is the waiver for?
Yeah, so it's like super common, especially in the military. I had a pilonidal cyst, so it's like a little cyst like on your lower back, and I got it removed before I had to get it removed before I played hockey at school, and I did. It was like a year and a half, 2 years ago, and for whatever reason, like normally, like the Army said it was totally fine. They weren't worried about it, but the Air Force, I guess, is a little more strict about it, and I totally ratted myself out in the recruiter's office. He's like, "Have you ever had a surgery?" I was like, "Yeah, I had a spinal cyst surgery." He's like, "Oh, like this might be an issue." So I went to a different recruiter. He's a special warfare recruiter up here in Utah, and he's basically just making sure that it isn't going to be an issue when I do get the chance to go. That way I don't get to the prep course and do my physical, and they're like, "Yeah, sorry, man." So that's it from a high level.
So you've had the surgery. It's just a matter of the Air Force basically accepting that you are in good condition and that the surgery won't be a factor. Okay. Well, I think that in some ways, just even though I did not have that experience, I actually had a cyst removed on the back of my neck. It wasn't the same kind that you had. Just the name didn't sound familiar, but it was some other kind of benign and just like a lump on my neck. And I had it removed, and I also ratted myself out because they asked if I'd had any surgeries, and of course I said, yeah, I had this thing removed. It was an outpatient thing, not a big deal. I did have to get a waiver for it, but the thing is that the Navy just didn't really care that much. They were like, yeah, whatever, like here you go, here's your waiver. But it just figures that, like, of course the Air Force might take exception. That's a bummer. So, I mean, do you have? So I guess what I would say is that certainly there's real hope for you. I mean, I know people that have had serious surgeries to get waivers for them, so I think you should be fine. But, what are you doing to get the waiver? Where are you at with actually getting this waiver?
Yeah, so basically, I talked to the recruiter, and he said, you just basically need to go get a second opinion on it and bring me in as much information about the surgery and about the whole process as you can. And so that way I can bring it to like whoever's above him and say like this waiver needs to be approved. And he had a kid who came in like a couple months before me who like got it signed off super quick, but it was because I had ratted myself out to a non-special warfare recruiter. It just kind of like messed everything up, I guess. So that's pretty much as far as I've gotten.
Okay, and so then last question, just to provide some additional context, which was, do you have family members that have been PJs or were in the military?
No, I'm the first one. So
interesting, good. Honestly, that's also not too uncommon. I come from a family with, at least in my kind of immediate circle, no military. A lot of my buddies that went through also came from families that did not have military experience. I think it's in part because the people that are drawn to special operations, this might sound heretical, but it's not really meant to, which is they aren't really drawn to the military. They're drawn to that particular unit that happens to be in the military. And so there isn't typically that legacy thing unless it's like, my brother was, a PJ, and so I'm going to be a PJ, with the exception of those types of things. So that's pretty common. Okay, so then in terms of, your journey here, so like obviously the waiver is a thing, and you're waiting to get it, and without it, you wouldn't even get your shot. But let's just assume you get the waiver here. What is the timeline you see for going in?
So, right now I'm actually I'm just starting Jeff Nichols' pull-up progression program. That's where I lack a lot. So that's going to be 6 weeks, and then I'll redo his BUDS prep PJCCT program as well. I would say I'd like to be in by the end of the spring, heading to basic. I'm also trying to hopefully position my assessment selection class not in the summertime in Texas, because I really don't like the heat a ton. But I mean, you kind of get what you can. So end of spring is my goal. Really no later than that for me, as long as everything with the waiver goes well. But yeah, that's kind of my timeline at least.
So, are you going to be graduating college first, or are you just in college and you're dipping out in the spring?
Yeah, I'm dipping out in the spring. I have one more year left after that, but I have to have like a pretty lengthy internship at a fire department to kind of finish it out. And I basically kind of got to the point where like I'm not the greatest student, and I was like, all right, like I can finish my degree later, like it's one more year, and like right now, like I literally cannot wait any longer. I've been waiting for 3.5 years to try and pursue this, and so I just kind of took massive action and told, I didn't play hockey this semester, and told my coaches, I said, hey, I'm joining the Air Force. They're like, you're crazy, and pretty much kind of started burning the boats and said, this is what I'm going to do, and just kind of go full tilt into it.
So how does your family feel? Or are they kind of like, Nick's going to do whatever he wants?
So I'm super blessed. I have like the most amazing parents in the world. Super supportive. Mom, of course, is like scared, as all mothers would be. They're kind of like, I read a post of yours one time where your dad was asking you like what your backup plan was going to be. That's kind of where my dad is right now, because like obviously like in life you fail at a lot of things. Like I certainly made my fair share of hockey teams, but have definitely missed a lot of them, and set a lot of goals and missed a lot of them. And so he kind of is wondering like what happens, Nick, like if you don't make it. Like you've got 6 years, in the Air Force, like what are you going to do with your time? And knowing you, like you're gonna beat yourself up if you don't make it. So that's kind of where he's at right now. But ultimately, they're super supportive of it, just because they want me to pursue what I want to pursue and try to better myself.
So then, is there anybody? And I'm kind of fishing here. So if I'm just fishing in the wrong, if I'm fishing in the wrong place, then you can just say that they don't have this. But is there anybody in your life that, maybe they're a friend, maybe they're family, whoever, that you've sensed that there is maybe some doubt that you'll be successful or that you're making a bad decision? And if so, how have you handled it?
Oh yeah, 100%. So growing up, especially in high school, I was like totally off the beaten path from pretty much anyone. I somehow convinced my parents to let me move out at 17 to go play hockey in like 4 or 5 different places across the country. And that was, I never took school super seriously. So there was a lot of doubt there that I would ever play hockey in college. And that I really struggled with for a long time. And telling people, I haven't told a ton of people, but it's starting to circulate between, friends and family that, I'm going to go do this. And the first thing they say is, well, like, why do you think like you're going to make it? Or like, Nick, like stop dreaming. We've heard this before. We've seen this before, from you, because I've always been someone who set probably unrealistic goals for myself, a lot. But for me, I would rather set a super high goal and not achieve it, and get the benefit out of, like, as I'm trying to attain that goal, what I'm learning, as I'm growing. So for me, yeah, I think what you're kind of asking is there like a chip on my shoulder? And I would say yeah, for sure, because there's been a lot of goals I haven't hit, and a lot of goals I haven't hit that I definitely could have hit. So I think setting a huge goal like this for myself I mean, being able to accomplish or even being able to just get through the, I mean, if I went to assessment selection, and I was a 4-week non-select, like still making it through it, like that's a huge boost of confidence. That's a huge, thing under your belt to say that you did, or to know that you're capable of doing that. So, yeah, that's kind of a long answer to your question.
No, but you answered it the way I was hoping you would, which is, you have people in your life that are viewing your kind of body of work, which is your life, as, almost indicative of a guy that's not going to be successful. And I had I definitely had a similar kind of situation where when I kind of declared that I was going to go be a Navy SEAL, there really wasn't anything in my life. If my life was, put into a resume for people to see, there wasn't anything that indicated that I was someone that could even just commit to anything for that amount of time. It takes time to get through the whole process. And, it's really difficult when you found your calling, like it seems you obviously have. But you actually don't have anything to point to that shows that you're going to be successful at it. All you have is yourself. And I think the people that realize that that's how it's going to be, that they're going to need to kind of rely on their own feelings, their own, gut instincts. They're going to have to rely on being their own cheerleader in a sense. The people that realize that and like excel or thrive in that situation do really well when it gets hard, because you're not seeking outside justification or validation that you're doing the right thing or that you're being successful. You just look internally and you know that like you're in the right place, and that's like it's a big part of growing up, and it sounds like you've actually experienced this already. Cool. So then I think that you're actually in a great position to go. Having some support is great, but you definitely want, I mean, as backwards as it sounds, you do want people to feel like you're not going to be successful. It's one of the simplest pieces of motivation you can get when you're in selection. So then shifting gears a little bit, in terms of selection, so I mean, I'm familiar with the pipeline, with the PJ pipeline. But obviously I'm not a PJ. But can you kind of maybe speak to, I don't know, I guess, and maybe you don't have anything, but speak to the things that you are worried about, nervous about, anxious about in terms of selection specifically. Maybe it's an evolution, maybe it's just the fear of, X, Y, Z. What is it about selection that stands out to you? Let's call it in a negative way.
Yeah. So, log PT, as funny as it sounds, actually scares the death out of me. Because at every hockey training camp I've ever been to, I'd always been like borderline, like kind of on the weaker side of things. And I hate, you do a lot of shoulder work in hockey, 100% just for impact reasons, like so you don't break your shoulder when you get checked. And I always hated it, and I was always super bad at it. So that's, like, as funny as it sounds, like log PT is like for some people it's water con. For me, it's like log PT is like my big like silent killer. I would say log PT, and obviously like buddy breathing is one that always kind of gets guys. But I think that's kind of a hurdle that you just kind of have to reach when you get there.
It's interesting that you point out log PT, and I like the way you're kind of viewing this, which is you strike me as someone that's pretty aware of their strengths and weaknesses, at least as far as I can tell from this conversation. And there's no part of me that I don't hear you saying, I'm going to crush selection, I just have this one little thing. It's like, you know what, there's a lot of things that could happen in selection, and you even said earlier that, if you make it through and you're a 4-week non-select, at least you got through the challenge of those 4 weeks. Like, I can see that you're looking at this very carefully. And to bring up log PT is recognizing in yourself what's going to be a struggle. You're not listening to what other people say is difficult. You're very much in tune with what you're going to struggle with. So that's a good starting point, to be that specific. I would say that with log PT, and I think with any sort of like big kind of physical evolution, which every selection course is going to have. Logs are a staple in, many selection courses. Is that even if you were fully physically prepared for it, whatever that looked like, any selection course, regardless of military unit, the cadre is looking to bring the whole class collectively to a point where they're all kind of broken. And so if you have a class where the baseline is everybody in that class is just complete studs, just because that's the way it worked out, everyone's just shoulder studs, right?
Yeah.
It would just take them longer to get to that point, but they're going to make it happen because they have to see how the class reacts, how the students react when things get really, really hard. And so just remember that, like, you may know that that's a weakness for you, but, like, everyone at some point during log PT is going to feel as shitty as you expect yourself to feel. And so for you, it's a matter of just hanging on. It's not so much worrying about will I keep up, because everyone is going to be at a breaking point with logs. That's the point of logs. They don't do it to see if you're strong. They don't do it to see if you're physically strong. I mean, you need to be able to carry your own weight to a degree, but they're really testing you to see how does your mind react when you're fucked and you got nothing left. And so no, and believe me, dude, it's crazy. Like with SEAL training, because I got rolled 2 different times, and I got rolled after I finished Hell Week. So I was fortunate enough to be able to support a Hell Week class. Like when I was kind of waiting to join another class, you're what's called a brown shirt rollback. And you're kind of like, the admin bitch for the cadre. Like they use you to like run around and do stuff for the first phase cadre while they put the class through whatever they're doing. But one of the big jobs of the rollbacks is to be support for Hell Week. And so now I've finished Hell Week, so I'm a Hell Week graduate at this point, and I got to watch Hell Week from the outside. And my goodness, does it look different when you are an outsider looking at it. It's so clear that the cadre is adjusting what they're doing to that class. Everyone does the same kind of staples, right? You're going to do the same kind of checks in the box, but they're adjusting the intensity based on how the class is reacting. And I remember one time they did actually log PT, and the class was just so obviously in complete turmoil. Like everyone was like barking at each other, and it was like just a disaster, that they did logs for like 5 seconds. It was like they had achieved the desired result immediately. But then in the next class, when I was again a rollback and again was helping around with the next Hell Week class, same time frame of Hell Week, when they should be doing logs for what the last time took like 5 seconds, it was like 2 hours, because this class was like super stoic, super quiet, and was just, I guess, prepared to just suffer in silence way longer than the previous class was. And so logs took a lot longer until the class started to break down. You started to see cohesion fall apart, and then like the same sequence followed that took 5 minutes in the previous class. So really, you got to understand that no matter what you're doing in selection, it's not going to be, just do it 100 times and you'll get through logs. It's like, no, your cadre is going to make sure the whole class is fucked first. So enough on that. What are you doing because it sounds like you're someone that's, again, you're aware of your weaknesses. What are you doing in terms of training? And I know you already mentioned you're doing Jeff Nichols' program, and he's awesome, and I fully endorse his programs. But what are you doing, like, for you specifically? Because you've already identified that, for example, shoulders are a weakness for you. Is there anything that, like, you're doing that is kind of tailored directly to weaknesses of yours?
Yeah, so obviously, like, the pull-up progression has been helping me. And actually, I started seeing a sports psychologist to basically just like help prep me through tough times during selection and give me like the tools to be able to like overcome like obviously through any pipeline, like you're gonna encounter something that is gonna be kind of like a make or break moment for you. And for me, it could be log PT, it could be water con, it could be I make it through assessment selection, I get to free fall school or airborne school, and find out I'm scared to death of heights. Like there's going to be like trials through every evolution, through every part of selection, part of training that's going to kind of push you one way or another. And so I think mentally building myself with just like tools to be able to overcome those hard times, I think is kind of something I've been trying to work on, along with like becoming more confident like in my physical abilities. I think along with my mental abilities is going to really help. And then just been like reading books, like the book that changed my life that actually made me decide to like fully commit to this was Can't Hurt Me by Goggins. I had read it for like a work book club, and then after that I was like, I'm going to do it. So I'm rereading that right now, and I just finished reading Extreme Ownership as well as that. But that's kind of something I've been doing a little bit different than seeing this sports psychologist.
I have not heard of anybody using a sports psychologist for this, but I think that's fascinating, and I think that's so forward thinking of you. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding of what a sports psychologist specializes in is effectively like how to handle performance anxiety, because everybody gets it to some degree. It's famously known in baseball players. There's a thing called the yips. Are you familiar with this?
I'm not.
Okay, so baseball, it's this like super. It's like, okay, in order to throw a ball, let's say from shortstop to first base on a ground ball, it's a very routine throw for basically any baseball player. I mean, basically above the age of 12, it's a routine thing. You pick the ball up, you throw it to first base. But you don't often think about the mechanics happening in your arm. It's just muscle memory that you've trained to. The yips are when you start to obsess over like the actual physicality of throwing the ball, and you start to overthink a simple thing as throwing the ball to first base. Now you're like, well, like, what if I don't throw it fast enough? Or you start worrying about what's going to happen if I don't throw it exactly right. And you see these players who have all the physical tools, are exceptional baseball players, but like suddenly can't throw to first base when a game is happening. If they were on their own in their backyard with nobody watching, they could zing a fastball across the diamond like 90 miles an hour into the chest of first baseman 100 times out of 100. But put them in a game scenario, and all of a sudden they can't do it anymore. And I'm actually speaking from my own experience. I developed a huge case of the yips when I played baseball. It effectively ruined my career, even though I was extremely talented, could throw the ball wherever I wanted. But like in games, it was just this thing where it's performance anxiety. And I remember wishing later in life that I had seen a sports psychologist to like learn about how to handle that. And I actually had an opportunity in selection when I was facing my do or die moment, when I had failed pool comp a couple times and basically had to pass this test on a certain day or my career was done. And it felt like being in a baseball game and that same anxiety of like, oh my God, I hope I don't make an error. But I guess the way I handled it was I just like decided I was gonna do it or drown. So I want to learn more about like what are some things you've taken away from your sports psychologist, because that's something that I've actually wished that I had in my life, and I think that it's a great idea for people going into selection. So can you talk a little bit about that as much as you can?
Yeah. So I started seeing him like a year ago for hockey. I had so like in high school, like my 100% focus was to make the NHL. Like as crazy as that is. And I totally kind of fucked myself, to be honest, because I didn't take school seriously, so I never got like the opportunity to go to like a Division I school or Division III school and even make a run because my grades were so bad. So my only route was to go. It's called Major Junior, and I got to a camp. I got basically selected to go to this camp. If I made the team, like I had a really good shot at least making like an NHL combine or an NHL scouting list. And I got like a bad case of the yips, pretty much, and totally overthought the whole thing. Acted like a complete like retard in front of like the coaching staff and like the senior captains, and kind of just totally screwed myself. And I did it like 3 or 4 more times, and I started to do it when I got to college up here in Utah, and I kind of like was like, all right, I put my foot down and Googled sports psychologist near me and found this guy, started seeing him, totally kind of turned me around on how to deal with like performance anxiety, stress in general, how to, how to help overcome like big scenarios of defeat, like not making a team, not performing well, not getting playing time. So I've been seeing him for a little bit, and he and I had talked a couple times about going in the Air Force. I didn't say anything about special warfare, and he had brought up to me that he was working with a kid who was going to Ranger School, and that's kind of where I was like, all right, so I should probably tell you this, like I want to be a PJ, and so he basically kind of set me up. Every week I go in, we put myself in scenarios that I might face during selection, or scenarios I face like in life. I help my buddy run a business, and we've had our fair shares of ups and downs. And I'd put myself in a nice little chunk of debt trying to bail us out of something. And so like we worked on that and like kind of how to deal with that. So anything in life, anything in selection, we just try to put myself in the scenario, and basically almost find a way to talk myself through it, to be totally honest. I mean, positive self-talk positive affirmations is huge, is like hippie as it sounds, just because, I mean, when you're, like, selection's supposed to be, at least in, the pipeline for the Air Force it's 4 weeks long, and then you go to all your schools, but, like, it's literally supposed to be, like, the worst 4 weeks of your life, and I can't even fathom, like, how miserable it's going to be, but if I can, teach myself, positive affirmations and positive tools to help myself through that, I mean, any edge I can get, it's a mental game. Any edge I can get mentally, I'll take. So that's pretty much kind of what we do. He specializes in performance anxiety, so with college and pro athletes. So
I've got to say that you strike me as someone that's a lot older than 20 years old, and I'm not. This is not even like an ego stroke. I haven't met all that many people that are your age that are taking it upon themselves to seek out sports psychology because they've identified that they have some performance anxiety. I think a lot of people, me included, at your age, were hiding or kind of in denial about that aspect of ourselves, because I definitely had significant performance anxiety, and I didn't do anything about it.
That's what, that's really why I wanted to get on the call today, was because, I felt like when I found you on LinkedIn, I had read some of your stories, and I had followed you on Instagram, and then I joined OA, and you're very real in the sense of, don't take this the wrong way, but you had fucked up quite a bit. You'd been kicked out of school, you'd been, and I really related to that because I'd fucked up a lot. Kind of the same scenario as my life. I had really good opportunities to play hockey, and I was good, or at least good enough, and had the abilities to at least put everything I had and into it. And I had just been lazy, arrogant. I totally let grades in school go away. I mean, I literally didn't graduate high school until my first year of college. I kind of snuck my way in. And I was like, I should probably graduate high school one of these days. And so I totally, just understood where you were coming from. And so that's, I understood, I have deficiencies there. And so that's kind of where I related to you. And I was like, all right, this is OA is something I want to be a part of, because I just understood. And I felt like you understood kind of, where I think a lot of guys are at in OA, it's a stressful thing to say, you want to be a SEAL or you want to be, SF, or, there's some, like, I think there's a couple EOD guys in the chat. So.
Yeah, I think that, and this is totally not like a selling point for OA. This is not a like pure selling trick or something, but like Zach and I just naturally view special operations and the people that do it in a different way than I think at least a lot of other operators are willing to admit to. Meaning, if you were to just Google Navy SEALs as an example, because they're the most kind of, notorious unit, the most well-known unit right now. I mean, what you're going to get is you're going to get movies and you're going to get books. You're going to get pictures of badassery, and none of that is like false. None of it. I mean, some of it might be, but the kind of the heroics and the bravado and the war fighting and the epic selection program and all that. I think that it creates an incomplete picture of that world, especially because, I mean, dude, you nailed it. Like, when I went into selection, I mean, I was the farthest thing from disciplined warrior, badass, tough as nails. Like, I was none of those things. And this is, again, not a humble play. It's just the truth. I was a shitty student because I didn't apply myself and I made excuses. I got in trouble because I thought I was cool and tough, but I really wasn't. I actually thought I was a big tough guy. Growing up in the town I grew up, it was like big to get into street fights. I got my ass kicked constantly. I grew up in a household of all women, 2 sisters and my mom, and I grew up, as much as I maybe resented it, I was far more in touch with, my feelings and much more willing to talk about how things made me feel, and that was like interesting to me. I reached a point in my life where when I saw special operations, it was initially I was so drawn to that world, that kind of the heroes, the legends of special operations, all the stuff that you can Google right now. I was so drawn to it. And I actually really saw it as like my gateway to kind of right the wrong in my life. Take a life that, was mostly mired in mediocrity and poor decision making and really just burning bridges and not capitalizing on my, potential, all those things. I did it over and over again. I saw the SEAL teams as being my opportunity to like right the wrong. If I can just become a SEAL, that'll make up for everything else in my life. But what I didn't realize was going to happen is, on the one hand, certainly I joined the rank and file of the SEAL teams. That's a big deal. But it blew me away that basically everybody who goes to special operations, and I'm willing to say basically everybody because it's just about everybody, has a story just like mine. They have I wasn't really good at anything, humble beginnings, maybe like you described yourself as being off the beaten path, kind of not following the herd. But what you really have is a bunch of normal people that just desperately want to do something bigger with their life. And when you get through training and you become an operator, you still are that person, but you've just been built up and surrounded by other people that support you, and you have this profound mission set. But I think what's lost, that nobody is projecting, but I think it is probably the single best recruiting tool, the single best thing we can say to the next generation, is to say, dude, the team special operations is comprised of ordinary people that fuck shit up. Like, that's every single person's story is I fucked up. I'm a normal dude that fucked up, and here I am. I found my calling,
Have you heard Tim Kennedy's, like, why he went SF?
No, I certainly know who he is. I don't know his story, though.
Yeah. So I actually just heard yesterday he got 3 women pregnant and thought he had HIV, and he was tired. And he said he was tired of feeling like he had fucked up his life, more or less, because he was just a prick. And and 9/11 happened, and he went and got an SF contract, and that was it. He said he got the shit beaten out of him when he got to his ODA because he was an arrogant prick. And I mean, now he's like a light, on social media for aspiring SF guys. It's it's crazy.
I honestly, everybody from just the people that view special operations from the civilian side, that that they're not necessarily looking to join special operations. They just see kind of what's projected out there. They form the opinion that the people that become special operators, honestly, regardless of unit, the people that become special operators are somehow like different than the general population. And in some ways that's true, but they view it like, oh, well, the people that become PJs and Raiders and Green Berets, those people are like built differently. Like, that's not me. That's not anybody I know. That's somebody else. When in reality, it's actually it's a job that is far more appealing and catered to people that have really actually struggled in life and have identified this thing that is their calling, which is special operations, as the thing that's going to change everything about themselves. So you get people that are fucking just fucked up normal people that all they want to do is right the wrong. They want to right, and of course there's a call to serve. There needs to be some baseline interest in the military, but you have people that overwhelmingly just want to fix what they've fucked up.
Well, listen, Nate, it's been great having you on here, man. I think that what you got to remember is that even though I know it can be painful to think back to your hockey career as something that could have been but was not, I think you should put it in perspective and recognize that there's been lots of people that have had similar experiences to yours that have kind of used that experience to, fuel a successful trip into special operations. I think that your backstory, and kind of carrying around that chip on your shoulder, is something that will, I think, ultimately help you in your quest to become a PJ. Because I see it time and time again. I mean, a lot of my buddies have all had the experience of kind of leading a mediocre life until they discovered special operations. Not to say you led a mediocre life, but, certainly you have higher aspirations for yourself. And I think this is your opportunity to do that. So listen, man, it's been great having you on here. And that's going to do it for today's episode. All right, guys, take care.